everyone, and welcome to We Go Back. I'm your host, Bryan Abou Chacra, and on this week's episode, we will be reviewing The Shape of Things to Come and Something Nice Back Home, the 9th and 10th episodes from Season 4 of Lost. When we open up to the first episode, we see Kate, who catches Jack in the medical tent, taking prescription pills. He comments here that he wrote this prescription himself, and I think that's really funny because he actually tries to do that when he gets off the island and he's slipped into his crazy stupor. This episode really focuses around Ben, though, and how he got off the island, because as we had seen in The Economist, he was able to leave the island and was using Sayid as his assassin. In our first flash forward, we see Ben wake up off island in the Sahara Desert, which is very close to Tunisia. That's actually the town he goes to when he gets through the desert. And if you remember, that's where a Dharma polar bear was found with the collar when Charlotte was excavating in the desert. I also want to bring up when Ben asks the clerk at the hotel what year it is. We know from earlier in this specific episode and all of Daniel's comments that time is apparently pretty relative to the people that are on the island. So find it interesting that they include that question. However, it does reveal that it is October 21st, 2005, which is 1 year and a month after Flight 815 crashed on the island. As Ben is getting to his room, he notices on the TV that one of the Oceanic Six, Sayid's wife, was killed while they were in Los Angeles. And I think we can start to see the web we weave. Remember that Ben's leverage always comes from something that a person has an emotional investment in, and that's exactly what he uses to get Sayid on his side, because it was Nadia who got run over by a car. Now I want to get to Widmore's attack on the barracks, and in this scene we see that Ben does actually have a plan in place already, and we see that once he learns that there's actually going to be an attack by Widmore, he pulls out all of these hidden guns from all of these places, which shows that when Harper had said that Ben is exactly where he wants to be, but he was there for a reason. So now I want to go to the scene where we see how Ben convinced Sayid that Widmore is after him and that he attacked him at a time of great weakness while he's trying to bury his wife. But he builds this whole story that Widmore is actually trying to do something sinister against them. And I want to bring this up because we've only seen Sayid experience this story from Ben's side. Even though off the island we're watching Ben put together a great plan, on the island we're watching one crumble. We see an example of a situation that doesn't go Ben's way when he meets Kimi, who has his daughter hostage. Ben knew how far this guy would go and still did nothing to save his daughter. But one thing I realized while I was watching it this time around is that the last thing that his daughter hears while he's trying to console her, she isn't actually his daughter, and that he doesn't care about her at all. She's a pawn and that she means nothing. And then she's shot and killed. I want you guys to think, is Ben so devoted to the island that he's willing to watch his daughter die, or is he just too selfish and stubborn? So we all sat there in shock and watched the look on Ben's face as his daughter has just been killed, and he ducks out into an ancient chamber inside of his panic room, comes back covered in what looks like black ash, and then shortly after we find out he has summoned the smoke monster. And it seems that Ben does have some sort of control or interaction with the smoke monster. But I did want to talk about how Ben does actually seem to have a heart. I think this is the first time you've ever seen Ben show any genuine emotion since he was a child. And it's actually kind of heartbreaking to watch him go through this, because no matter what, he did care for Alex as his daughter. Now let's go to our final scene in the episode where we see Ben confronting Widmore. One thing to note is that Ben is wearing all black in this scene, while Widmore is wearing all white. Pay attention though to this conversation between Widmore and Ben. They are talking about the shape of things to come. It's really setting into play what the rest of the series is going to look like. He talks about rules, and he talks about how Widmore changed the rules by killing his daughter. However, Widmore brings up a very good point, that he didn't kill Alex. Ben let her die, so the blood is on his hands. It's revealed that Widmore used to be on the island, and that everything that Ben is standing on is on the shoulders of Widmore's work, and that he stole the island from Widmore in one way or another. So we know that Ben is very ruthless and very dangerous and is capable of taking over people as powerful as Widmore. Now I want to take us into something nice back home, where we are focusing on Jack and his journey off the island. We find out that in the flash forward, he's actually with Kate and living a happy life raising Aaron with her. And a little point that I wanted to make sure you guys noticed, he is reading Alice in Wonderland to Aaron as he's sleeping. However, on the island, things aren't going so well. We find out he has appendicitis and needs to have surgery. And it just feels like something is trying to stop him from leaving the island. Rose actually notices this and is reading the situation. And I want you guys to think about this in a different way. It does sound a little goofy, but we're starting to see that Lost has some sort of mythology and science fiction to it. So maybe what they're trying to tell you by Rose, the woman who's been healed of cancer, suggesting that something is trying to keep him from leaving, Jack isn't meant to leave the island. And we see that in his flash forward. In this scene, we see him meet Hurley. He's back at Santa Rosa, and Hurley says that he's been having visits with Charlie. He tells Jack that somebody will come to visit him too. Now I want to talk a little bit about our B story going on throughout this episode, which is Jin securing Sun's exiting from the island. I think it's really cool that they put into this show that Charlotte can understand and speak Korean. I loved how they presented that to us by her laughing at their jokes, just like Sun laughed at Kate's comment, and that's what revealed that Sun could speak English. They always had a way of communicating things subtly for you, and all you had to do was pay attention to hear them. But we do see that Jin is willing to sacrifice rescue for himself to ensure Sun gets off the island so that the baby and her will be safe. This takes us back to our flash forward where we see the visit that Hurley was talking about, and I did want you to notice the shoes that Christian is wearing are white sneakers. This causes Jack to think he's losing it, and as a result, he asks for a prescription from his colleague. This gives you another piece of what makes Jack not supposed to leave the island. Now let's discuss the scene after they've operated on Jack, and Juliet is having a conversation with Kate. I think this interaction is really interesting because Juliet is very aware of what's going on. Ultimately, we find out that Jack's been awake the whole time, and she's aware of that. She was using this opportunity to tell both of them that you should pursue each other since you still both really care about each other. And I think it's a cool thing that we see Juliet always trying to support people and make them happier. It really sets her apart from what we know about the others. Now let's go into the flash forward where we see Jack being all messed up, and Kate comes home. He gets out of her that she's been doing stuff for Sawyer, and paranoia is not worn well by Jack. We see how crazy he gets. The thing that I want to talk about most, that Jack really likes to hold over people's heads that he saved their lives. He did the same thing to Sarah when he saved her from her car wreck, and now he's holding it over Kate that he got her off the island. Now I want to get to our scene with Miles and Sawyer in the jungle. Sawyer wakes up and notices that Claire is gone, and Miles points out that she went off with somebody she called Dad. And I wonder if this has anything to do with his power being able to speak to the dead. But what we do find out is that Aaron was left behind and Claire went with Christian. So maybe this sets up why Kate was with Aaron off the island. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in this week to We Go Back. Next week, we will be reviewing Cabin Fever and the first part of There's No Place Like Home. This season finale is super long, and it was actually aired on 2 different weeks, so we will do it 2 separate episodes because it'll be way easier that way. Email me your thoughts, questions, theories, anything to WeGoBackPodcast@gmail.com. Always love hearing from you folks, and until next week, see you soon.